and putting it on YouTube for people who want to get back to it. All right, so we are recording now. So tonight is Asco Mycota, and we were trying to focus on stuff other than morels because we wanted to devote next week strictly to morels and very similar things. So that leaves us a lot of stuff to look at tonight. So I'm going to, let's see. So what we'll do is I'm going to go over just a couple quick slides I threw together just to get everyone on the same page. And then we can start sharing. I have observations from 6 or 8 people. You saw you, Penny, responding to you, and a bunch of other people. So we'll share them. But if there's other people here who would like to share observations, go ahead and start typing your name into the chat box, and we'll just get a running list going, and we'll just go in order of how people want to go. So go ahead and type your name in there now, and I will start jotting it down. And I am going to share my screen. And so I just did a little bit of really brief research on the Ascos. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because I don't feel hugely qualified to speak super in depth about this. But I just wanted to give the very basics of we call Asco Mycota to everyone, so we all know we're on the same page, because I imagine that term may be unusual to some people. So what we're referring to, the Asco Mycota are a group, a phylum, I believe, of fungi like the Basidio Mycota. And I believe, according to Wikipedia at least, it's the biggest phylum of all the fungi out there. And what defines Asco Mycota specifically is how the spores are formed in here. So you guys can see my screen. So you see these spores are formed inside of these sacs. In fact, that's what asci means, a sac in Greek. So this is 2 relatively common types of sacs here. I'm not even sure what that one's actually from. This is actually from a morel. That's just a good picture I could find. And we can see the spores. You guys can see my cursor. The spores here are all lining up inside of this sac. And these sacs sometimes have openings on the ends, different types of openings. Sometimes they're little trap doors. Sometimes they're like needle tips. Sometimes these sacs just rupture open. But at some point, these sacs are going to open up and release the spores out of them. Now, how this differs from a lot of the other mushrooms that we look at, which we call the Basidio Mycota. So what we're looking at here is not an asco. This is what we kind of generically call a Basidio, like the guild fungi and many of the other mushrooms that we look at. What separates the Basidios and the ascos are the way the spores are being formed. So if you look here, these are what we call Basidium, and the spores are forming on the tips of these Basidiums. So these little points that are on here on the end, the spores are forming on the tips of them. And of course, we were just looking at this, and the spores are forming within these sacs. And these sacs are being formed on whatever the fertile surface is, whether you're looking at something like a morel, which would all be all those little pits, or some type of truffle-like fungi where it would be inside of it, or if it's like a bigger cup fungi. We'll see lots of examples of these. So usually when you're looking at Asco Mycota, it's fair, with a little bit of experience, it becomes fairly simple to tell that you're looking at these types of things. They look different than a lot of the other mushrooms we look at, and they're often like cup fungi, or often a carbon, like the carbon balls, or the black, like the carbonaceous type fungi that we're looking at. But there's all kinds of different forms of them, and I'm hoping we're going to see a lot of different ones, a lot of different examples tonight. So I got this from Jacob Polk. He posted this on the Mushroom Discussion group on Facebook a couple of months ago, and I thought was a very helpful way to understand what all these ascos are. So he said he was specifically trying to figure out the basics of ascos. So he built this tree, right? And this tree represents all these major classes of ascos. And I don't think this is all of them. I think there's some more of them, but he was specifically trying to get to the ones that produce things that we call mushrooms, or things that we would associate with mushrooms, whether they're little tiny cups or like the larger things that we can see. A lot of the ascos are small or microscopic and we can't see them at all. But he put this together, and as you can see, supposedly all these ascos are monophyletic, so they all come from one common ancestor. So they are all related to each other, unlike some of the other stuff we've looked at in past weeks. Or they all come from one organism and have been evolving from that one single point in time for quite a long time. So what we're looking at here, all these different things here, I'm not going to go deep into all of these, but some of these here are some of the major groups that we're looking at. And I want to start right here, this Nakanoro Mycedes. This is where the majority of all of our lichens are at. So I wanted to point that out, that almost all lichens have some sort of asco mycota in them. We know that lichens are groups of organisms with sometimes a couple different types of fungi and algae and a few other things sometimes in there. But the vast majority of them all have an asco in them. Okay, so some of these other groups that are in here, the Mycedes, these we see a lot of things that we call mushrooms, like the Leotias, a lot of bright colors and weird shapes. And I'm reading right from Jacob Polk's post, so I want to make sure I'm giving him credit for this. The things we call Cerdario Mycdes, these have all like the Xylarias and the hypoxylons, the cordyceps, which are those crazy things that are parasites of insects. Mycedes, it's a small group, a very small group with only the couple of the black earth tongues that we see in there, Geoglossum and Trichoglossum, and a few other things. The Mycedes, which a lot of people really like because, of course, they contain tuber, which is truffles and morels, but also other things like Pizziza, which I know we'll see some of that tonight, Granola, some of the other big cups that we see often starting this time of the year. And then find the Mycedes, which we've seen a lot of because Dave has those Neolectas that he's been collecting. And I thought this was interesting that these things, the Mycedes, are all down here all by themselves. So that class was created just for that genus of mushrooms, and it's very kind of distinct and all by itself. And there's not very many of them. There's just a handful of those genera throughout the world. So I thought this was a pretty cool tree. I think Jacob points out in here there's a couple of things that are missing that he would have liked to have added to that, but it kind of gives us an idea of what some of these things are. So they're not as confusing as we think. This is such a huge group of mushrooms, but you can kind of make sense of them. So for the resources, this is the main thing that I would use, that I personally use, is Ascomycetes fungi of North America. This is by Michael Bugh and the Bassettes. And this, I think, is the in North America, this is the best one for basic ASCO identification. There's huge amounts of technical literature out there. You could spend all day looking at the technical literature for ASCOs. Some of it going back, still like relevant stuff, but going back, 100 years. But a lot of that stuff is going to be extremely technical. So this is a good place to start. And this one, I just picked this book up last year. This has a lot of ASCOs in it. Of course, it's a European book, so I'm not really sure how super relevant it is here to North America. I haven't been able to discern that. But it's a beautiful book. It's got some great pictures in there. And I suspect it will be at least helpful. I would go with this book, the Bugh and Bassett book first. And then finally, just a few websites. The ASCO France, that's a website that is used really heavily by people that are into ASCOs. Now, it is in French, and it is pretty technical. This is a pretty advanced site, but it's worth looking at if you're into that. Mushroom Expert, he's got a key with a lot of cup fungi on it. So that's a good resource there. And finally, I just threw this here. This is a link. Xylarialis of the Boston Harbor Island by Roel van der Grift, I think is how you say his name. I may be mispronouncing his name. I haven't actually gotten a chance to look at this because it was behind a paywall, and I didn't want to pay the $25 or whatever it was to look at it quite yet. But I think I might look at it because it has keys and descriptions to the Xylariales of Boston, which is not far at all from here, based on a larger fungal like diversity survey that they were doing there. And I think he has like 50 species or something in there. At least one of them are new. So this might be where, if you're into the Xylaria type stuff, and there's black Ascos, this might be worth checking out. All right. So I'm going to, that is what I got to get the ball rolling tonight. So with that, I'm going to check this. And it looks like I don't see anybody raising their hand to share yet, right? So if that's the case, I'm going to share my screen again. And all right, we can all see this, I think. Marisol, tell me if you can see this, because you're the first one.
Yes.
All right, great. So I'm just going to go in the order that I receive these from people. And again, this is open to everyone who wants to share. If you did not send me stuff and you want to share from your own screen, just let me know and we will get to you. So go ahead, Marisol. Tell us what you got.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, so this is an Ascomycete. It used to be called imperfect fungi, and it's the asexual stage of some kind of very tiny black asco. I don't really know too much about it. Pyrenomycetes, something like that. And but I don't know anything about it. So I have found several species of this type. They are different because the spores are like, what's the name? They're called Helical Spores. You will see when we see the other photos. So this one, I found it on a piece of abandoned pine plank in the woods. I fell in love with this when I started looking at cross fungi, and I found out that there was this person who made a monograph about them, and it has the most beautiful illustrations. So I compare my finds, the microstructures, with his drawings, and it matches this one. And this one is very special because you can see that the dark vertical stem, I don't know the right words, it has these little vesicles like structures from where the helical spores come out. And these helical spores are coiled, and when you put them in the water, they uncoiled. You'll see in the photo. Can you show the other photo, please? So that's the best I could do at that time. So you see that they uncoiled, and one end is wider than the other end. Maybe the difference is in the fact that one side is attached to this little vesicle that I showed you before. Can you pass, please? Oh, that's my micro photography. You can see the vesicles, because there are not too many that have these little structures. Other spores come directly from the brown hypha, the main structure. I don't know the name, sorry. All right. You can see some of them are a little coiled, and some of them are coiled. And these ones don't have segments in the individual helicospore. Other ones, there is another group and the spores are segmented. And there is a third group where the spores are three-dimensional, and we're going to see one of those.
So
this one,
I wanted to ask her, so you said this is an asexual state of something, but you weren't sure what it's.
like Mycedes, something like that. It's a little charcoal ball, like a little flask, and it's many of them together, super tiny.
This is the thing we're looking at?
No, that's a nail.
Oh, so what are we looking at here?
I only found the yellow, the blurry photo there. The yellow is the asexual stage of that other black. I'm sorry for that, but I couldn't get a better photo.
Yeah, okay, I understand now. Cool.
So, yeah.
All right.
Okay, then I have another one. This one is called Helicosporium aureum. The other one is called Helicum auratum. I have found it a few times now. This was the first time I ever found it in 2018 in April. In April. By accident, I thought it was a crust, but I didn't know anything. So when I took it home and I did the micro work, my goodness, that was the most incredible thing I have ever seen. You see the helical spores. So I think that the fruiting body is very simple. It's only one stem, and the helicospore grows at the end on the top. And it's attached by the top part that is coiled right there. And it's gigantic. And so when you put it in the water, strange things start to happen. They lose their color, something uncoils, and then the effect of this yellow color disappears. You will see in other photos. Go ahead, look. So this is as you get them from the sample. That's how they start showing first. And the helicospore is divided. It has segments. You can see them there. And what you see on the edge is how this hypha coils around. It's like a visual effect. And then they start uncoiling, and then they turn like some kind of yellow color. They uncoil and they're really long. Another one there.
Miracell, are the coils the ascos, the sacs?
I don't know what you're saying. What?
Well, this photos that you're showing of the coils,
Sí.
are they the ascos, the sacs that the spores are in?
Oh no, that's the spore itself. This one is
the spore is spiral?
The spiral is the helicospore.
So
this is a spore. This is uncoiled. It's humongous.
So this is a asexual state of an asco. So one of the things I didn't touch on is, I said that the ascos have the sacs with the spores in it. That is when it's actually going through sexual reproduction. A lot of these things reproduce asexually and don't even bother with producing that sac. They produce a different type of spore. Either sometimes, or I think it's believed that some of them do it all the time. They just have given up their asci, I think. It's kind of confusing, to be honest with you.
I do not understand that too well, but what I understand is that it's like an extra form of making sure that this species keeps going on, keeps appearing and eating the wood and reproducing.
That's how I understand it too. Yeah. That it's so difficult for two compatible members of the same species to meet each other out there in the world, that they have a backup method where they can just reproduce on their own in case they can't find a partner.
So in this case, the fruiting body is that brown stem-like structure, and the gigantic things that I show you are the helicospores. Each one is a unit, but it's gigantic. You can, when you find this on the wood, you can see them with you see some kind of texture. It's the spores because they're so big. The third one, look, can you show the third photo again? That one. That's how they are on the top of the vertical structure when you just find it.
Right.
This is Helvela acetabulum, and I always find it in Smithville Park where I go, in the same place. But last year it was crazy. I found more than 100 fruiting bodies. And the special feature about this one is that the inside surface is smooth and the outside has these veins-like structures that go up to the edge of the cup and they divide, and it has some kind of ribs towards the base. And they can grow really big, like maybe say like 8 to 10 centimeters in diameter. And one cool thing about them, the caps, is that you blow on them and they puff back a cloud of spores. And I found like so many in one spot. So I wanted just to, 10 centimeters by 11 centimeters. I put that down there. And they were in both sides of the path. And the path is like, it has some kind of rich soil along the river, and people go by all the time. I don't know if they like that movement created by people walking by. I don't know, but they like that habitat. Lots of deciduous trees.
Maricel, what time of year was this?
April.
Okay.
That was last year in April. I did the micro, so the spores are really big, like an oval kind of shape. And it has the sterile parts that accompany the ascin and called paraphyses. And some of the paraphyses were capitate, the other ones have different shapes, as you can see on my drawing. Oh, and the asco was cylindrical, because sometimes it's pointy, sometimes it's really long, narrow, it varies. Yep.
So one of the things that we have to understand when we start looking at the microscopy of the ascos, they have a whole different set of morphological features that we're looking at and different names. So like, we were looking at the asci, which I guess that would be that, right? And then the paraphyses, which are these long string-like things that are often in between the asci.
I don't know if the function of them is like give structure, support, or something like that. Because they don't, yeah.
That's what I've heard other people on this group say, that they think that it keeps the asci pointed in the right direction, something like that. All right. Why do they call them vinegar cups?
I have no clue. I didn't do that.
I know you didn't do it. I'm just wondering, somebody came up with that name.
Okay, yes, weird. Okay, so this one is called Scorias Spongiosa. Look, I have to say something. My photos come with the names backwards through you because I don't use common names. But when you present it, they come with the backwards. Yeah. Okay. So.
That's iNaturalist. That's just the way iNaturalist is.
Oh, mine doesn't. Mine is the other way with the binomial name. Okay. So this is Scorias Spongiosa. It's a very interesting ascomycete. And I was so lucky to get it from the beginning. So I went by, Smithville, where I go a lot, has a lot of beech trees, very, very old ones, huge. So this seems to happen only in relation with the American beech tree. And there is these insects, I don't know the name, some kind of aphids, and they're very woolly. They have this white fluffy stuff on their rear ends, and when you come close to them and you blow air, they dance. They call it the boogie woogie, something like that. I'm sorry, it's a little blurry. Couldn't do better than that. And so they come to the beech tree to suck the sap from the tree. And when they do that, they poop. So their whatever, the poop falls on the floor and falls on other branches, falls on leaves. In this case, it was falling on the floor. And it starts as a black layer, just black. And then few days later, it forms this creamy, fluffy stuff. So it's just starting to happen. I couldn't come back on time to see how this ended. So I took another person's photo from online to show you the result. So all this creamy, fluffy stuff ends in a black, spongy-like material. And it could be big. Can you turn back to the other photo? So I took this photo from somebody online, and this mushroom, I mean, this fungus is made out of this conidia. No, conidia, there's spores, pygnidia. These vase-like structures are called pygnidia, and they have a long neck, and at the end of the neck, there is some hypha that opens up a little bit. So they throw their spores out of that, through that neck, in the top part of the pygnidia. Look, can you point?
What are we talking about here?
The top, yeah, through where the spores are released, the conidia. Conidiospores, I'm so sorry. So the fruiting body is made out of hundreds of these vase-like structures that are really dark, that end like black. At the end, they are black.
All right, cool.
Okay, and this one, Syzygitis megalocarpus, is a it's like a no, it's not. It's like I don't know if that's an asco, but this is so beautiful. It's one of the few parasites that leaves the host recognizable. So you can see that this was a bolete, yeah? And it forms like a veil kind of structure, and it starts yellowish because the tips of this cottony stuff ends in yellow balls that are not mature. When it matures, it turns grayish bluish. And I have a photo of I took a photo from somebody online because the microstructure is so beautiful. You can see that it, yeah, the yellow and the creamy. You can see the top of the bolete. And that's what is happening. The yellow ones are immature and the black spheres are mature. The micro is so beautiful. The next time you find it, you may want to grab a little piece and working on the micro. I'm going to do that because it's really beautiful.
I have a question.
Yeah, give me 1 second. And I was reading in Motion Observer that this fungus, if it is a fungus, I'm not sure. It's something like that, whatever it is not picky. They have found it like in 67 types of fungi. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know, wasn't, oh, it is a zygomycete, right, which is not an asco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not an asco, right?
Okay, not an asco. Okay.
Another one of those more obscure groups of fungi. Classes.
Reading, I don't know if it has changed now, but I was reading that it's the only one of its kind. There is not another species unless they found one new one that I have no idea.
Jim Richards once took a photo many years ago of that fungus. It was quite beautiful. I think it won one of the awards in the photo contest.
Cool.
And it was on a mycena.
Yes.
All right, well, thanks, Marisol.
Thank you.
Are you there, Dave? Call on Dave once, twice. Okay, we'll skip over Dave for now.
Dave, me?
No, Dave Washleski.
Oh, okay.
Are you a Dave? Do you have something to share?
Yeah, I have just a short one.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you go for it then? And then we'll go to Dorothy.
This is what, can you see the little critters?
No, not yet.
Oh, geez, how can I make this happen? All right.
Did you hit share screen yet?
Yes. Okay, let me see. Here we go. Now, can you see it?
Nope, we're just looking at you.
Oh, geez. All right. Share.
There we go. Now you're sharing.
Now, let's see. Can you see that?
No, we're still looking at your thumbnails.
Oh,
Stop sharing and share again. That might help.
Share.
Now share again
Okay.
and click directly on your video.
Okay. How about now?
There you go. Now it's working.
These are the little critters that
Beach aphids.
Maricel was talking about, beach aphid, and there's the black spot underneath.
The poop is so sugary that
Yeah.
the fungus starts growing on the sugar droppings.
Yes, I had a better one than this, but it's a pretty interesting insect. You know, they sit still, and as soon as you go near them or touch a leaf, they all just start going off. Okay. Whoops. One more thing, and really why I was here. Now, can you see that?
No, just your thumbnails.
Do you see my picture?
Nope, just your thumbnails. Stop sharing and share again.
In the butt.
Yeah, I don't know why it does that. But,
It's probably me. How about now?
you can see that.
That is a tuberum. Oh, tuber magnatum. Tuber magnatum. That is an Ascos of the Pezzel variety. Does that make sense? And I didn't pick them in my backyard. If I did, I would live in the Piedmont area of Italy. That's where they grow.
Are they truffles?
They're the prized white albit truffles. Yes.
What habitat?
I'm sorry.
Can you explain about the habitat?
I cannot. I don't know the science behind them. I know they only grow in one area of the world, at least the prized ones that are very expensive.
Oh wait, you didn't find this. You bought this?
These were in a restaurant that I was at.
Oh,
I was going to say, Dave, that's a lot of truffles we sitting on.
I was confused. Okay.
Yeah, it was a great. We do this every year in the group.
I wonder how much they were worth.
Yeah, that's a lot there.
You know, $1,600 a pound. That's probably about $900 worth there. And we all fork it up, about 8 of us. And, you know, it's expensive, but it's a real treat. The aroma just saturates the restaurant. If anyone else is in the restaurant, usually we reserve a whole table at a restaurant or two. If anyone's in the place, they thank you for experiencing the aroma that comes from them. They're all about the aroma. And if you love mushroom ammonia, if you love mushroom aroma, they're heavenly. So, but that is the prized white alba. Luke knows about them.
Yeah.
How did you
Oh,
have them?
That's all I have. I just wanted to share that. I don't have any. I had some cup fungi. I don't know where the pictures went. So.
Dave, what food were you eating that they were on that had?
Well, we arrange a chef. We go to their restaurants. There's a Blackfish and Conshohocken, and then there's a local guy. We go to a Merchantville now they just serve you 8 different dishes. You know, the first one's cream of mushroom with these white truffles all over the place, and then different like breasts of duck with the white truffles. Everything is truffle centric. They'll even make an ice cream from truffles for your dessert. You know, it's all centered around the truffles.
This is a restaurant in Conshohocken?
Yeah, they did it once a year for us. He would buy the white apple truffles, and we would just pay him cash for that, and then he would do the whole meal around that. So then we had to pay him for the meal too. It's just a yearly around Christmas celebration, and it's like a wine group. So you know the best wines are coming out for this. But I don't mean to go away from a mycological value of this, but it's a
I
mycology.
think you have
So-
several of us intrigued to be able to potentially join you.
That's awesome. So if anybody's interested in what the spores of this look like, if you look at the Taxonomy Tuesday announcement for tonight, the one that came out yesterday, the assay and the spores are from white truffles
Oh, cool.
that I took a slice home from work to do microscopy on them one time.
It's
So,
probably a $10 slice, right?
yeah, you know, I mean, you have a microscope, you got to look at them, right?
Yes.
Cool. Well, thanks, Dave.
The name of science.
In the name of science, that's right. So,
All right, I'm going to stop sharing unless you want to stare at it.
cool. Thanks for sharing, man.
Yeah, sure. It was great. Thanks for having it.
Okie doke. So I think Dorothy's up next. So you ready, Dorothy?
Yeah,
All right, I'll just go in the order that the pictures are in, right?
okay, fine. I don't know if this is still called what I know it as, a little tiny yellow cup fungus called Bispirella citrina. I think it has a common name called lemon drops. They're quite tiny. They're always on debarked wet wood, probably from over 10 years ago, taken at the Great Swamp National Wildlife Refuge. Next.
All right. And just so if anybody's interested, the names of Dorothy's mushrooms are up here in the upper left.
And I didn't identify this, and I'm not sure exactly where it was found, but I think Glenn Boyd figured it out. And this is called Camerops petersii. The common name is called the dog snout fungus. You know, a big black shiny nose, and it's an asco. And you can almost see in this picture the very pimply top to this shiny black area. And when you make a section through it, next slide, you can see the deep inside, these are cavities. So the little pimples really are like the neck of a flask. And if you go down into the tissue, there are these little bottoms of the flasks. And right now they're filled with black and very liquidy, and the black is from all the spores. So it's like a flask, and inside the bottom of the flask, you can find the asci, A-S-C-I, that's the plural for ascus, which is the, again, Greek or Latin for sac. And so the little pimply structures on top represent the top of the flask, and these cavities represent the bottom. And the technical term for them is perithecia. And so it's a really fascinating fungus. It was the first time I ever saw it, and I think it was found and identified by Glenn Boyd many years ago. Can't remember the place for sure. So next. Now, similar to the lemon drops, and if we go in a little bit more, the disc of these little tiny cups, and again, they're on very wet, debarked wood, is greenish. So this is called Chlorosplenium chlora, but you really need to do the microscope work because there's something that looks just like it, and it has different size spores, another Chlorosplenium. I'm looking at the transcript and it says coral spleen. So I'm hoping someone will put or I can put the names up a little bit later. But again, from the distance, you'll hardly see these. You just have to get up close to see these tiny little cups, and the center of these little discs or cups is greenish, hence the name, the species name chlora, which means green. Next. Okay, one of the other kinds of ascos are jelly babies, and they kind of are jelly-like to touch, but they're not a jelly fungus, so that on that surface, on that top surface, you're going to find asci. This is the genus Leotia, Leotia, and there are some species, this is probably Leotia lubrica, which is the cap is the same color as the stipe, which is kind of off yellow. And there's some talk as to whether another fungus attacks it and makes the top go green. But yet there is supposedly another species that does have a green cap. So I'm not sure exactly what this one was, but I'm pretty sure it's Leotia lubrica.
Dorothy. And there is a hypomyces that attacks this Leotia, and it makes the whole thing look green, the stem and the cap. It's called hypomyces leotiae, something like that.
So it's you can't, if you see a green capped one, you can't be sure.
No, this one is a parasite of this, the one you showed.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's another fungus growing on it that makes it green. But supposedly there is Leotia viscosa that is a green cap. At least it's in the field guides as that. And but they're jelly babies and they're fun. They're kind of small. You have to, look in the wet ground. Next. And these are earth tongues. And there's two kinds of earth tongues. And these are not very large either. Usually black and a little bit shiny. The two genera are Trichoglossum and Geoglossum, glossum meaning tongue, but the trick refers to stiff hairs. And this is a Trichoglossum. I'm pretty sure I photographed this at Sherman Hoffman Wildlife Sanctuary in Bernardsville. And I did the scope work, which you need to do. You have to look at spores to identify them to species. And this one was not the typical one shown in the guidebooks, Trichoglossum hirsutum, that means hairy, but a different species, I think it began with M, because the spores had at least 7, they were elongated and they had 7 septa dividing their length. Septa, S-E-P-T-A.
Great.
So
Thank you.
that's it for me.
Yeah, thank you, Dorothy. Oops, sorry, I closed my whole email thing out. Okay, let's see who was next after Dorothy. Looks like it was Penny. You there, Penny?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, so here's your first one, Microstrum of Lacusa.
Okay. I only have one picture of it. They're very tiny. Microstrum of Lacusa. Microstoma meaning small mouth, and flacosa is like woolly, called woolly. And I found it. It's growing on a little branch, which is where you usually find them on decaying hardwood. And it was an Eastern pen mushroom foray, 2017. And there was only one on this whole little branch, but in the books you'll find some that have several of them on a branch.
Awesome, that's a cool one.
What time of year was it?
Sometime in the summer.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly. I have to look back.
Sorry, I just did the same dumb thing again and closed out that email.
Oops. And I think there's also other very similar looking ascos that are not hairy. I read about, but
Yes.
I haven't seen them.
So there was the name of that one for anybody that was interested in that, Microstoma Lacusa. Here's your next one, Penny.
Okay, so Xylaria carnudami. Xylaria refers to like a stick, and I guess a lot of them stand straight up like that. And I have like 4 pictures of this, and this was found on the same foray with the Eastern pen mushroomers. And the only way I identified it was because somebody there had a book of Xylaria, and I found it in there. So this one I read about, and it says that there is an anamorphic stage, and these are, or a young stage, and that's what this is pictured here. And they have the whitish coating over them. So I have a couple other, and so there are a whole lot of them. And I'd never seen these before. I thought they were dead man's fingers, which are the black, thicker ones that stick straight up and larger than these. But luckily there was a reference book there. And when they're more mature, they get dried out looking and darker, and like it looks like white powder on them. And that's the mature form.
What time of the year was this?
This was also in the summer, probably July.
Okay. I had found some Xylaria earlier, I guess last spring, and they were really prolific. And I was told a lot of the Xylaria that you look at early in the spring are difficult to identify because they're asexual in the spring. You're looking at the Canidia spores, and it's very it's hard to identify it from them. You have to wait till later in the year when they are sexually reproducing to look at the asci.
Is there a colloquial name for that finger-like white mushroom?
I think there was somewhere I saw something like ladies' fingers as opposed to dead man's fingers, but which are the blacker, thicker ones. Other than that, I don't know.
Luke, can you
Yeah.
please mute everybody? I hear TVs and dogs, and
Sure.
it's annoying.
Okay, you'll have to unmute yourself again, okay, Penny? If somebody was asking about the colloquial name for this, if you go into iNaturalist and type this name in, iNaturalist will often tell you what the common name is, if there is one.
Luke, I'm not sure if I messed up. Is it Danae or Damae?
There you
It's
go.
actually Damai, I
Oh,
think. I
okay,
typed
okay.
it in wrong. I typed
Okay,
it in
I
wrong.
put it with an M, but I wasn't sure when I
Yes.
saw your name. Okay, thank you.
That's correct.
Okay, here's your last one, Penny.
Okay, and so Spathulariopsis velotipes. The common name is fairy fan, and they're really fun. And I always like to get really down low so I can look at them because they have a great name. I found these in the Adirondacks under hemlocks, which is where they're supposed to grow. They're saprobic, and they have orange mycelia. So velotipes refers to velvet foot because the brownish area looks like velvet. And
I see them a lot where I am, which is also Adirondacks.
yeah,
They're cool.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
really are cool.
they are cool. If you show them I showed them to my granddaughter. Of course, she loved them because they're little fairy fans. And I think there's two other pictures too.
There
Yeah,
you go.
there's some more. And they're small too. They're maybe 1.5 to 2 inches.
Cool.
I found them once in one of our forays, maybe Stokes, one of those places in the mountains.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Penny.
Yeah, Stokes has a lot of hemlock, as I remember.
When you go on forays, sorry, I've never been on one. Do you go a distance away from, I guess, the main site where you meet at, or how does that normally work?
Well, what we usually do at forays is we meet and have a brief, little talk, and usually the crowd starts walking together, and they typically end up breaking up into small groups. And some people might stick very close and really just crawl around and spend the entire 2 hours looking at a couple of logs, and other people go hoofing it across the countryside. So, but usually, well, our forays usually last for 2 hours. We return back to our meeting point in 2 hours. So that's really up to you. I mean,
but that guarantees a variety of finds. The
But
ones
what's
that stick
the best-
around, the ones that go far, the ones that go to different spots in a park sometimes because they may find different mushrooms there.
But what's important is to stay afterwards and compare and look at and identify as much as you can together.
yes. So, right. So there's usually the 2 hours of actual collecting, and then usually we spend about another 2 hours around picnic tables with all of our collections and identification books and whatnot. And that's where we're doing the work, trying to identify them. All right. So Susan, you are up.
Okay. Okay. This is Calocypha fulgens. I don't know if it has a different name. These I find at the same time as my Sarcosomas, which is way before the morels. These are April, very wet it has to be, usually kind of a mossy conifer area. This particular little cluster is what I would call mature. The spores forming on the inside of the little cups, and they're very yellow. The next picture, which I took several years ago, this picture is the same thing, but when they're much younger. They have this very interesting blue-green color. It also may be something to do with nutrients they're taking up or whatever. But you can see that they are about to turn yellow as they mature. but I had never seen anything like this when I moved up here, and they were fairly easy to identify. Several books have them, but not in this color form. But they do say that when they're younger, they do have this blue-green color. I just thought they were the coolest little things. They really are so beautiful. And they were, I don't remember the date specifically on this, but it was well before most spring mushrooms that you would see. It actually may be a snow melt thing too, up right after the snow has really started to melt. But I thought that was a really cool thing that maybe some of you haven't seen before. Okay, and then, yeah.
That's hard to believe that that's the same mushroom.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe you, but it's pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that I have very seldom when I see it, do I see it in the bluish form. But these are two very separate years. This is about 8 to 10 years ago, this blue one. Whereas the other picture was maybe, if it wasn't this past year, it was the year before, 2019. But there's one.
So do you find a different kind in the middle of the summer, or because something that they call orange peel fungus? Is that?
Yeah, that's something else again.
That's a different one?
Yeah, that's something else again. These are only about a ½ inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch across. They don't tend to get much bigger unless they sort of flatten out as they get older, and then they're still not more than about an inch across.
The other one is called a leuria.
The what?
The bigger one is called a leuria. Like a
Loria. Oh,
name.
yeah, Loria. Yeah.
Yeah.
The real orange part.
Mhm.
The orange peel fungus, right? Yeah, I should have put that in because I saw that this year or 2019. And
Look
I have one coming.
oh, good.
Hey, look at these black dots on the conifer needles.
Ah,
I bet those are ascos.
could be. I'm getting to the point where my eyes won't even hardly see that, let alone pick it up and try and identify it. Okay, this is something that I can find on fairly regular basis because they're out my back door, basically. I have a small woods behind me. And yeah, well, lobster is the common name. Gary Linkoff had to sort of make that up on the prompting of Ursula Hoffman when he was doing the Audubon Society field guide. So the lobster mushroom as a common name is fairly, it's used by everybody. So anyway, these are probably good enough to eat, these right here. But if you see the next picture, I find quite a lot of them when they come up. And if it's very wet here in the Adirondacks, these are, it's a fungus on a fungus. That is, it's an ascomycete, the red-orange part is on a Lactarius or russula. I keep thinking it's Russula brevipies, but I'm not sure of that. But the mushroom underneath is mycorrhizal. So that means if you find them somewhere, they will come up again in the same place. If the weather is, I find it needs to be warm and wet for these to come up. But what can happen here is they will flush several times through the summer. I can find them usually after the 4th of July. And the latest I've seen them is about the 1st of October, maybe 1 or 2 last hurrahs, as it were. And lobster, like a cooked lobster that you get out of the ocean. I see the chat, somebody's got spelled wrong. But anyway, I don't tend to eat these. I like them when they're rotting and smelly and going the raspberry red, which you can see up in the left-hand upper corner. And then what I do with them, the next picture, Luke, is I peel off the outer red-orange part. And I particularly like it when it's well rotted. And you can see my discards up on the top here. And I peel off the outer part and then dry it because I use that to dye wool. It makes the most beautiful kind of orangey, peachy, rosy colors if you add some ammonia. Coral colors. So I don't need all of that white bulk. It's a complete waste of mushroom, but it is tedious and they also stink to high heaven. So you have to sort of do it outside. but that's what I do with lobster mushrooms. Okay, then I've got another species to show you. Now, this is one of my favorite little mushrooms. This is a thing I find every year. It's going to be my first mushroom I'm going to be looking for, maybe the end of this month. And I'm in the very northern Adirondacks, depending on when our snow melts. I usually, the first ones I see, I have to go in on nanocleats because the trail is still packed down from the cross-country skiers and snowshoers, but the mushrooms can come up even as the snow is melting. It's Sarcosoma globosum, and they just sort of inflate with water, and then they eventually form their spores as they sort of flatten out. These are 2 different years, 2 different groups, but they have that very black disc that sort of spreads out on top, and then they sort of collapse after a while. This picture, I think, was taken April 12th. And they can be very plentiful. In some spots, I found over 100 last year. This is the same group of mushrooms 1 month to the day later. They stay out there for weeks. Yep, that's April 12th. This is May 12th. There's such an interesting little fungus. And if it freezes or snows, they just turn into little rocks and sit there and then thaw out when it gets warmer and continue growing. It's at about week 3 or 4. These have probably already thrown their spores, but at about week 3, you can blow across them, as somebody said before, and get a little cloud of spores coming out of them. They're really a cool little fungus. They're just, I call them my Jello shot mushrooms. If they have a common name, I don't remember what it is. But they seem to be associated with spruce up here, and they're always in the exact same place. I have 4 different sites that I trek into about once a week to watch them grow over from the end of March or early April into the 1st of June. They end up like little shriveled up potato chips, little black potato chips.
Susan, I like learning the colloquial names for them, and I just looked it up. It's called the Witch's Cauldron.
Witch's Cauldron. I wonder who made that name up, though. I don't, well, the biggest ones I've seen are about 4, maybe 5 inches across. The average size is about 3 inches across when they're mature. But again, it depends on how much moisture they take up initially when they grow. They're just the cutest darn thing. I could have shown you hundreds of pictures because I just get such a kick out of them when I go into the woods and see them. And I count them. I keep track of how many I see. And then I, watch them week after week. Aren't they cool though? They really are cool. And if you poke them, they're like Jello shots. They're rubbery. And if you pierce them, they sort of ooze out their inner gray Jello-like stuff, which is mostly all water. Really interesting fungus. Never saw them till I moved up here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Bravo. Very
Thanks,
good.
Susan.
I have something, I've heard of something that you could do with the parts of your lobster mushrooms that you're not using for dyeing. You dry them and you crush them and then use them like breadcrumbs.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, it was a recipe on foragerchef.com that I came across. Haven't tried it yet, but it sounded interesting.
Why was he doing that? Was he using
Because
the?
he had a lot of lobster mushrooms and he had dried them.
So did he use the whole lobster mushroom, or he didn't bother
Yeah.
apart
Yeah.
that?
He dried them and then he crushed them. The whole mushroom.
Yeah, see, I have no use for the inner white part. It doesn't do anything. So I particularly like them when they're very mature, and the more reddy orange and smelly they are, the better they are for the dyeing.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing, Susan.
I just read in Wikipedia that witch's cauldron, Sarcosoma globosum, is an endangered species in Europe. Actually, it's nearly threatened, and it's red listed in 12 countries.
Now that's really interesting because Rick Vanderpool from New Hampshire asked recently for he wants to make a red list for the Northeast. And I responded with that mushroom because I read when I identified it that it is listed as rare in the books and things that I saw. And I wonder if it really is, because it's really this one trail, but the sites are fairly far apart. And it's a planted spruce stand from maybe the 1930s, but there's sometimes 100 of them in one spot, 75 to 100. But I'd be really interested if other people see it and to get a real mapping of where it is. But yeah,
We don't find it in New Jersey. I've never seen it in New Jersey.
yeah, but I don't think we have any spruce stands in New Jersey, do we?
Only planted ones, and they're small.
Yeah, Norway spruce stand is what this is.
Right, I understand.
And I've never seen it other than in this one spot. And although I have not covered as much ground as I used to 30 years ago, getting off the beaten track to see these.
Now, your stand of spruce, is it planted or they're kind of natural?
No, they're definitely planted. Yeah.
Okay.
Either timbering out, 100 years ago to 80 years ago, and then they replanted different species of trees. And in this case, no, I won't say it's a pure stand now, but they're mature now, of Norway spruce.
Right. Is this mushroom mycorrhizal? Do you know that? Or it's
Don't know, but I am highly suspicious that it could be because of the fact that they are literally exactly under the same trees in my 4 spots that I find them. I mean,
right.
To within a 10-foot radius of the place and now I've tracked them. The first time I saw them was 2012, and I've gone every year, and they've been the exact same place the last 8 years or whatever it is, 9 years.
Well, it's a European mushroom, so it's possible it was just a transplant. When the
I
original
wonder about
species were
that. I wonder
planted.
if it came in with the seedlings of the Norway spruce.
Exactly, from Europe, correct.
There's a puzzle for you, Igor. You look that up and research it.
I will.
Yeah, I'd like to know the answer to that. Sorry.
Okay.
Well, maybe if they're rare in Europe, Susan, you can give them back to wherever they'd like to have them in
Yeah.
Europe again.
I don't pick them once I saw that they were listed as rare, but what I do is sometimes the animal will knock them over and I'll take one, and the only way I've found, you can't put it in a food dehydrator because it's all jello. So I have to put it in the refrigerator in a wax bag and forget about it for 2 months. And that works really well. Turns into a potato chip. Anyway, sorry.
That was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Pretty
cool
good.
stuff. Okay, Nina and John.
Okay, this is a tiny itty bitty little mushroom that has no gills, and it's hard to see. It's how do you say it?
Vibrissia?
Yeah, Vibrissia
Truncorum.
truncorum, and
Folium. What?
but no, folium. It's not the truncorum. It's
Okay,
the
folium,
folium. Yeah. So anyway, I don't have too much except that it's very small and it's kind of interesting.
Nina?
Yeah.
There are 2 kinds. One is Vibrissia truncorum, which grows on wood, and Vibrissia foliorum, which grows on oak leaves.
Yeah, it's on leaf.
See, foliorum means folio is leaf.
Yeah, I think you were with me when we found this.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep.
Okay, it's from Franklin Park.
Mhm.
Right. Okay.
Pretty spring.
And these were from Ballpate, I think. Yeah. And they're Herbella. I don't know which type, but they. I had put the wrong name. I had put Crispa, and they're not Crispa, so I don't know which Herbella they are. But this is also an Asco, a Herbella. It was kind of cute.
We're looking at more of those next week, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
More Ascos next week of the morel type.
Helvella.
varieties. Yeah, Helvella, sure.
And then this one was growing on a tuber, a fake truffle. I think this was one on, yeah. It's like, it used to be a cordyceps. Topa corda.
Polypulcadium?
Yes,
Something
yes,
like that?
yeah. This was found in Franklin Park a couple of years ago, and I had who was it? I think it was Tim Baroni or somebody was with us who identified it for us.
The two possibilities. Longus segmentum or capitata.
No, it's not capitata. It's the longi thing.
Longus segmentum. Yeah, you have to look at the spores.
Yeah, it was a thing with a longi thing. We did.
Longus segmentum, I think
we
is
did look at the spores. Right. And we already saw that.
Yep.
That was gotten at Weiss, and then we also got it. Let's see, Cheetah too.
So again, the dog nose, Asco.
Right.
Cameropsis petersii.
Where did you see that, Nina?
We found it at Teeter Town. No, Teeter. Yeah, Teeter.
That Peter Town. Peter Town. Yep, I found them.
Weiss.
Yeah, that's not a 4A site I know of at all.
Yeah, those
Right. And Weiss. We saw the Weiss up north.
And may I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in this photo that you have in there, you can see the remnants of the cover that it was on the young fruiting body. So first it looks like a pancake with droplets and it's covered on the top. And then as it matures, the top falls off and reveals the fertile surface with all these, the holes where the spores are going to shoot out, I'm sorry.
Nice.
Oh, and if you touch it, your finger is black. The spores are dark. You touch that surface and you get the amount of spores on your fingers.
Teeter Town Ravine is right in Huntington County. It's not too far from Oldwick.
Cool.
I guess
All
I
right.
never made it there.
Oh, yeah.
And then this one, somebody was asking what this grows on. Was that the correct question? Is this the one you were asking about, Bianca?
It grows in a false truffle.
No, the dog's nose, what does
Oh.
it grow on?
Oh, what was it on wood? I
It's
think.
usually on wood, right?
Deciduous.
Wood.
Deciduous wood.
Yeah.
Wood.
Yeah, I have found it several times on deciduous wood.
Yeah.
On like rotting logs?
Even I have found it the first time in Teeter Town, it was on a fallen tree, deciduous tree. And the next year we came back and I found it again on the same tree. And I have found it in my park in Smithville Park on a standing dead oak tree, a huge one.
Yeah, that's what I've seen it on, either oak or tulip poplar. I couldn't tell which, but like one of the really big dead trees.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Okay, Virginia.
Okay.
What does Virginia have today?
I'm here.
Hi.
Okay, this
All right.
this is a lichen. It's this one does not have an ascus. This just has Cerdaria, but it's a Parmatrema, and the other Parmatremas, some of them do have apothecia with the asci, but these are along the edges of the foliose lichen are the Cerdaria, which is what it reproduces by. And as you can see, it has all these black cilia on it. And I just found this yesterday, right outside the house on a shrub.
So the Cerdaria that you were speaking of, that's the powdery stuff, right?
The powdery stuff is the Cerdaria. Yeah, that's what it uses for reproduction. fly off, and then they carry the usually the green photobiont, I think, usually comes along with them and it's inside of them, I think. And that's the only one I have. I tested it with K on the cortex, which was yellow, and on the medulla, it was K yellow turning to red. So that because I checked the book to make sure I had the right species. It's Parmatrema hypertropum. And that's the only one. And I just wanted to mention that witch's cauldron, sometime in the last year or two, somebody had found them up in New Brunswick, Canada. And it was mentioned on the New Brunswick Museum, I think, website or somewhere. But I remember seeing a picture of them up there. Okay, that's all I had.
Thanks, Virginia. So it's cool that you showed a lichen because everything that we've looked at so far would be more what we would call a mushroom, I suppose, yes. Right? But just to make sure everyone's on the same page here, when we look at lichen, all of this material that we're looking at is all fungal material, usually an asco of some sort. But then there's also other organisms living in here, algae or cyanobacteria, maybe even other fungi too. So every time you see a lichen, you are most likely looking at an asco.
Yeah, some of them have apothecia with the asci in it, and some of them don't. They just reproduce by these, these powdery Cerdario, or else even by other parts that break off. And
yeah, if you go ahead.
Yeah, I don't understand exactly how that works. Do lichens produce spores?
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
But the spores, but if it is made out of two different or three sometimes organisms,
yes.
The spore is the spore what?
So
from the fungus. And when the spore is mature and starts growing, somehow they have to capture an algae.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
So the algae will often grow by itself without the fungi.
Right.
So you'll just have algae growing on a piece of wood or a rock or whatever.
Right. So they have to capture some, but in this case with the Cerdaria, I think the little tiny powdery Cerdaria take the algae with them.
Oh.
Yeah. I think in that case, I think that's just a clonal packet too.
Clonal, right.
So again, this is like another one of those cases where they have more than one method of reproduction because that one single method is just a little too dicey.
Thanks.
Right. Depending on the species, the different species of Parmatrema do have apothecia, the fruit bodies, with the asci.
Yeah, if you look at some of those lichens that have the little cups on them, if you take those cups home and you look at it under a microscope, you'll see all the little asci and spores in there. I mean, you're looking at a little mushroom, really.
I put some information in the chat, but most lichens, even if they have apothecia, which produce the sexual spores of the fungus only, most of them reproduce by fragmentation or birds or insects that are crawling over them and break off either the Cerdaria or other little propagules, asexual propagules that have that look like little bits of coral. So they're like little fingers sticking up along the surface of the thallus of the lichen. And when they break off, it's the whole fungus on the outside and some algae on the inside of these coral finger-like pieces. But the Cerdaria break through the surface of the thallus, and they're granular looking, and they have some hyphae around the algae. So the whole thing, gets gets moved by the wind, fragmentation, by birds or insects crawling over the lichen. So the sexual chance of a fungus spore from a lichenized fungus landing on where the algae is kind of remote.
So Dorothy, from a little tiny piece of lichen, another lichen will grow. That's what it in simple.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
If it's in the right, habitat,
Okay.
on the right surface.
Thanks.
Cool. Thanks for explaining that, Dorothy. Okay.
Luke, you
Yes.
skipped.
I saw I skipped UK. I'm coming back. I'm sorry. But I did want to ask right now, it's 8:30. So we have half an hour left. So we have Kay, myself, and I saw Dave came in. Is there anybody else that wants to share tonight? I want to make sure I give enough time for everyone so we don't just dawdle and skip somebody. So speak now or forever hold your peace.
I just have the couple pictures that people have already showed, other same versions of them. So I'll let everybody else go.
Okay, we'll fit you in, Bianca. We'll save time for you. So nobody else? Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again. And
It's often very useful to see more versions of the same thing. You know that, right?
for sure.
It helps you know what you're seeing when you see it on your own.
All right, Kay.
Yeah, I started, I grouped them. I made sure that they were all Ascos. This was the Biscogniaxia marginata, which I found a week ago or so. It's very cute, and Sigrid used it on our ID session on Monday, so I was pleasantly surprised. It was like, cool. We see this occasionally. It's, the other Piscogniaxia atropunctata, what we call the biscuit. I had pictures also, but I didn't post on here.
Do you see this a lot?
Enough, at least a time or two a year, because I'm out in the winter a lot. This was in Prospect Park. I haven't seen it anywhere else in the last couple of weeks.
I found this one in Smithville, and I remember that Tom Bigelow helped me to identify it.
Yeah, we see that. So it was kind of a lesson to go through and see the ones are Xylaria. This Walea, I was surprised to find is a Xylaria. The next, is there a second picture that might be bigger? It's one of the, spots on wood that we find in the wintertime. Yeah, there it is. And Ethan and Tom in the New York Club, this is their thing. And so they tell you all about, why this is this. But this is the one we call the cheetah spot. That was a Gary, I think it was
Gary
cheetah
Linkoff.
spot when Gary was around.
Gary Linkoff just loved these spots on wood.
Yeah. Well, because going out in the wintertime, you got to look at something. There's all kinds of stuff out there.
Yeah. And Tom and Ethan.
And there's a lot of different ones.
What kind of wood is
What's
this?
that?
What kind of wood is this?
I don't know.
Because doesn't this grow in spice
Where
bush
was this
a lot?
one? Was this? Well, I was thinking maybe it was spicebush or the other no, it's not hackberry. I don't know. This one I think was in Van Cortlandt, right, in the Bronx. I'm not sure. It says on there, but I believe so. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I should take better notes.
Yeah, Van Cortlandt. I just thought I remembered learning from you guys, the New York Club, that this really is common on spice bush.
I promise to take note next time.
cool.
But it's a Xylaria, oddly. I mean, Xylariaceae or whatever.
So I guess I'm guessing, or it seems like everything in Xylariaceae are these black carbons, right? Is there anything that's not black carbon-like?
Yeah. Well, the fingers, all the fingers, and what else? This one is one of my favorites. I love taking these real close-up annulohypoxylon, and there's a big question now because there's a few different ones, but this one, I think I need to go back, and you can see the little rings around the osteoles. All around, all the little nipples are the osteoles where there's like a vase-like structure underneath that has the spores in it, and they'll eventually come out. And so when you see that little ring, you've got annulohypoxylon, and they're itsy bitsy teeny weeny.
That's good to know. Annulo, because of the ring.
Annulohypoxylon, and there's a few of them. This one I think is the one that starts with A, and I have to figure that out and get back to it. Because there's a couple that's only on the West Coast or only in Europe, you know, one of those.
Awesome. Okay, so now we're at the Heliocassia.
Did you get the third? Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, that was the annulohypoxylon.
That was the annulo. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, this was such a find. This was a Halwea. Does everybody know? Now the next picture, or there's one picture that has both forms. It's got a teleomorph form. Now the next picture, there, the cup and the little matchstick. Those are the two forms. One is the teleomorph and the other is the anamorph or some such thing. You know, one of those. Yeah, the New York Club has a number of people who are really, they know their ASCO interesting rare things. But this was such fun to find. This was in Inwood, I think, last year. I haven't seen it this year.
So the cup in the upper part is probably the sexual stage, I would guess, right? And then
most likely, right.
The weird little matchstick in the lower right is the asexual stage.
Yeah. Yeah, those must be, what do they call them? Like Conidia-spores or something that are on the
yeah. Yep.
On the non-sexual ones. There, those, they're very tiny, but fun to find. And here's a fave, the Ascocarinian. You can't give it a species name anymore because there's all these questions, and I don't do the spore thing. I don't use my microscopes, unfortunately. So I just leave it at the genus, and they're beautiful.
And then Pizzizer Mycedes.
That's the orange cup,
All
orange
right.
peel cup.
Excellent. How beautiful is that?
I like those white oak leaves too.
Those have really cool spores.
And
I
those,
gotta learn to use my microscope.
there's 2 to 3 inches across, the biggest ones.
Yeah, they were fairly large.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you can see with the leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice finds, Kay.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And here are mine. So let's see. I will start. We already saw this one, so I'll show this one. This Leosha, I love these old jelly babies. I call this Leosha vicosa. I never knew what Dorothy and Marisol were talking about with the hypomyces. So now I don't know. I always call the green ones vicosa and the other ones, the yellow ones, whatever the other name is.
Lubrica?
Yeah, lubrica. Yep, vicosa, Leosha lubrica. But apparently, as we were talking about earlier, that there's a hypomyces that turns them green, so it's hard to tell.
No, the hypomyces turns green, the whole thing, not just the cap. The whole thing is green.
No.
I have photos. Another day I can share.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then
It's in the Besset's book.
I say, okay, so
yeah.
so then this probably is vicosa then, because this is pretty obviously green. Sometimes I find them and it seems a little ambiguous. They're kind of yellow with a greenish tinge, or they're greenish but really faded looking, and I'm a little unsure, but these are pretty solidly bright green with a yellow stipe. And then we also saw this one already, Chlorosplenium. I just found this over the winter. I found this on December 27th, and it was frozen when I found it. I've already shown this once earlier this year, but there wasn't a whole lot out 2 days after Christmas. I was pretty excited to find this, something that was actually alive. You can see in this picture, I mean, they were frozen when I found them. See all the ice on them? But I took them home, let them sit for just a couple of hours. And these are very tiny. These are only 2-3 millimeters across each on dead wood, probably oak, maybe beech, something like that, some kind of hardwood. But I got spores off of them. And yeah, I got spores off of them after they thawed out. And then this is the tip of the asci, which was very faintly amyloid. I looked at that and I didn't even notice that it had any bluing on the tip of it. So we put Meltzers on it, and sometimes the tips of them, or not just the tips, sometimes different parts of them will turn, will react, will turn bluish if they're amyloid. And a lot of these, it's just the tips. And I actually had to go back after I read the description of this and look at it more closely, like blow up my photograph, but it's pretty.
Look.
Yes.
For those who don't know, when it's one is an ascus, and when it's many is an asci.
I think that's right.
Yeah, ascus is one, and the plural is asci.
Dorothy said that earlier.
Yes, I can never keep it straight.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that sounds right.
How do you tell this from, what is it, Chlorosplenium? Is that the other genus I'm thinking of?
Yeah, that's the one that turns the wood blue, right?
Yeah, the
Yes.
little blue cups. There's
It's a lot
two species.
more
Yeah,
green.
Yeah, this was pretty green. They're pretty yellow, and they like skew yellow too, like yellow green. So this was in sunlight. This is a fairly accurate color representation.
Yeah, I'm guessing the spores probably look different.
The
but,
spores, and these are actually really a lot smaller, I think. The Chlorosplenium, they can be kind of big, like 0.5 millimeter, maybe a millimeter across.
Yeah, the one species, the I never keep them straight. But the one gets up to be almost a centimeter sometimes.
Yeah, these were really small. These were, just a couple of millimeters. When I was researching too, there's a cryptic species that was found down south. I think Merrill described it from like the Carolinas, and has only been collected a few times. So there's this. It may not be a true species, but as of right now, it's still considered a valid species. So it would be worth looking at all of these closer because, whenever we see them, because there's some mysteries out there. Okay, then the Cylaria. Let's see. Oh yeah, this one does have a name on it. Lucadambar. Xylaria Lucadambar. So this is growing. This is a little Xylaria You can see the mushroom right there. And that's growing out of a sweet gum capsule. So liquidambar is the species name of the tree, or something along those lines. So these Xylaria are obligate to these sweet gum capsules. So I see I put it on the sweet gum leaf. So.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that.
Yeah, they're really neat. When you find them, like when you finally find one of them, then you start looking around and it's like, you know, there's tons
Yeah.
of them
Yeah,
underfoot.
there's usually several on the little thing.
Yeah, they're fun to find.
I have tons of those in Smithville, the park near my house. And also our club went to the Rancocas Nature Center and they found it there.
Okay. Well, let's look at this Pizyza. So this is a common Pizyza, really common Pizyza. Although every year I have to relearn it because I can never seem to remember. Pizyza varia group. It seems like every Pizyza I find in Philadelphia ends up being in this group. I usually put them on Facebook on one of like the Ascos sites, but you know, brown cup, usually on like wood or woody debris. So here's a good example of the asci that are turning blue, the amyloid reaction. In fact, on this one, it's so strong, I think I could see that before I even looked at it under the microscope. I had a little piece of tissue on the slide and I dropped the melters on it and I could actually see the blue line streak across where the tips of the asci are. I can't see the asci yet because they're microscopic, but I can see that blue line, the staining. And these were immature. There were no spores in them yet. Somebody told me that a lot of times with these Pizyzas, if you take them home, you kind of keep them in a wet chamber, like a shoebox with a little wet tissue in there or wet newspaper, that they will mature for you. And then you can look at the spores. And I guess you really do need to see the spores to really be confident in these Pizyzas because I think there's a lot of them. This is one of the things that supposedly this thing has is all these distinct layers when you cut the flesh. So we should
get that in spring.
Yeah, in the spring. So this was April 4th. No, I'm sorry, April 6th. So we should start seeing that pretty soon.
Yeah, but Phylogenium is the one that, I think that's the one that used to be Batio confusa. And that one's darker. And Varia is like, you've got group here that entails a pretty broad morphology. Usually it's a little lighter, but they do both occur in spring. And I think they both have smooth spores too, but there might be a difference in size of spores. That one looks like Phylogenia to me. It's got sort of dark brown.
Yeah, I don't know. I came up with this last April, but I'm not really that confident.
Yeah, you really need to. I forget what the distinctions are for those two.
I think I was also told too. Oh yeah, see somebody else put in Phylogenia in here. Billy D. I think somebody on Facebook told me that I really needed to have spores if I really wanted to be confident about anything.
Yeah, I think Rapanda is often, or actually Varia used to be Rapanda. Rapanda was a species name that's now lumped into the Varia group concept. I think that one's usually on like woody debris or wood, or like the base of like a rotting stump, things like that. And Phylogenia, I believe, is terrestrial, at least usually.
Okay, yeah, because that one was terrestrial, but there was little bits of woody debris in the soil when I dug it up, so it was kind of ambiguous.
It's probably spore dimensions, really.
Yeah.
That's what I'm guessing. I forget.
Okay.
Or maybe there's ornamentation on one of the kinds of spores.
Okay, here's my last one, Protocrea pallida from Burlington County, from the Pine Barrens. So this was a Mycedes species. So this was a polypore, and the orange stuff on it is the Protocrea. So it's a fungus that's attacking another fungus. So this is a polypore with an asco that's eating it up. So it's got this orange color to it. You know, the original polypore is white. Has this really intense reaction in KOH. It's like cherry red reaction. And there's another one, Hypomycetes aurantiacanta, something like that, that looks similar to this and has a similar reaction.
Aurantiacus. Hypomyces aurantiacus.
Yes, that's the one I'm saying. Yes.
I found that one. Yeah.
You know, they actually look pretty similar when you're looking at it, but this is more the KOH.
So the KOH reaction is pretty characteristic of this one.
Yes, but I think it reacts on the hypomyces too.
Oh,
this is what really gives it away. Look at these asci. 16 spores in the asci. And I couldn't get them all in one shot because of the plane of focus. But you know, counting them, you can see that there's usually most asci have like 8. That seems to be like the common number. When you start getting outside of 8, you're into some, you know, something that's a little unique.
There are few.
Yeah, there's definitely, yeah, I'm not saying everything has 8. There's definitely, but that 8 seems to be the common number.
Yeah.
And then when you get outside of 8, you're into more unique territory. So that can help you pinpoint things. So.
Is it, somebody said earlier that if you blow on a Peziza cup, you get the puff of spores. Is that with all Peziza or just some of them?
I don't know if they all do it, but
You have to catch the right stage of maturity. But very often the change in humidity or temperature, like when you pick up a cup fungus, it'll sometimes poof at you. And also morel will do that too.
yeah, and false morels. I've touched false morels and seen them like almost explode in my hand. It looks like.
It's very impressive when you're doing a walk and you know, you blow across the thing and it poofs a cloud. People, ooh, funny, really.
So Bianca, do you want to show your stuff and then we'll finish up with Dave? He had a handful that he sent me.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Let me open the first one and get it shared. So all of these I've previously shared and gotten the names, and I appreciate, and I wanted to reshare them with the names, and I feel really proud that I can know them now. So I have a couple of, I think 3 photos of this Cladonia lichen, I think it was.
Cla, with an A?
With a K, okay.
No, with an A, C-L-A.
Oh, C-L-A Donia. Okay, I will rename it. Make sure that I put it correctly. All right. And then let me get the better size to be able to compare. 1 second. All right. It has been renamed. All right, so here is the size with my glove comparison so that you get a sense of how big it is. And then this is another zoom in shot with the little caps. This was end of January this year, the 28th. All right, so then this guy, Hypopluxin fragiformis. That's the close-up shot. Oh, did I have another one of these? Oh, I didn't show it. Okay, well, that's a pretty good shot of it.
Hypoxylon.
Yes, Hypoxylon fragiformis.
Fragiformis, yeah.
On beach.
On beach, yes. Also, I actually found this the same day as the previous one, 28th. Here is also another crust, Irpex lacteus, milky tooth.
Actually, it's a resupinate polypore.
Yep. So
Oh, this was the polypore. My bad.
Not an asco.
Okay, my bad. All right, but this one, this is what we had. Parmotrema hypotropum. Thank you. So this has the black hairs off of it.
Yeah, cilia.
Yeah, cilia.
Yeah. And
Like
this is,
the cilia, cilia.
yes.
One
Uh,
of the many ruffle lichens.
right.
You go further south, there's many, many species.
And this is the scoria. This is the back of it. I was able to peel it off a little bit with bark, and that's a zoom in photo of it. Also, same day. I got lucky that day.
Yeah,
I-
lots of
I'm
ascos.
sorry to interrupt, but the only thing I see is a black screen. I don't see any fungi. Does anybody else have this problem?
No, I'm seeing.
I see the motion. Yeah.
I've seen everybody else's, Dave, Luke's and Dorothy's and Maricel's, but Bianca's, I'm not seeing anything. It's just a black screen.
Yeah,
No,
I
we
see. I see the pictures.
Yeah, and me too.
This
Do
is
you want-
bizarre.
Do you want to try to refresh Zoom? Maybe that'll work for you.
Okay, let me try that. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, any more, Bianca?
Let me see if this one is also. I think the Trimades lactinea is also not a
No.
asci.
No.
No, this is
Okay.
a crossed.
That
Right.
has
Gerinum ocraceum.
Yeah, Stickerinum.
Yes.
It's a crossed.
an asco.
Okay. So that was it.
Cool. Well,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Bianca. Okay, so we're going to finish up with Dave. I do want to mention before we go to Dave, because we'll probably go over a few minutes because we're almost at 9 o'clock. Just so everyone, for next week we're looking at morels and things that we would consider similar to morels, like the false morels, favelas, any of those things, anything that we generally associate with morels. So we'll do that in celebration of spring being very, very close. All right. So now that that's out of the way, we will go back here to Dave. We tried to call on you earlier, Dave.
Yeah, I woke up about 20 minutes ago. I fell asleep.
So, all right, you want to pick a few out of here?
Just go from the top, I guess. This thing on top was found by a Wyoming Valley Mushroom Club member. I didn't know what it was. I looked through the ASCO book. I could tell it was an ASCO from microscopy, and I came up with this. What does it say there? Anoceolia furfuraceae. And then Django Grootmeyers told me. Well, he just came on. He said he knew what it was, and he's pretty good identifier. So apparently, this thing that it is. It doesn't always look the same. It changes quite a bit as it matures. Supposedly it's pretty rare too, and I do have the collection preserved. So I forget what the name of this is.
Right here.
Iona Mydotus. Or I think the ASCO book just calls it Mydotus Irregularis. It was on a log, a piece of wood. I don't know what kind. I forget. It wasn't collected by me. It was collected by somebody else. But supposedly it's pretty uncommon, and it's the only time that I know I've ever seen it. The spores are kind of distinctive, so they're pretty small. They're these bigutulate little cylindrical, sub-cylindrical things. So that was very helpful. But I think the other name that I came up with, the spores were similar, but maybe the size was a little different. So that was pretty cool. This second thing, I don't know what it is. I thought it was Asco carini, because it looks like an Asco carini. It's a purple sort of irregularly shaped cup sort of thing. And I thought, oh, that's Asco carini. But the spores were way, way wrong for Asco carini. So I don't know what this is. So I just put it up as, I guess it's Pizzizaceae or, here's the spores. Those spores don't look anything like what you're supposed to see for Asco carini. These look more like Pizziza spores.
Yeah, I was gonna say they look like Pizziza spores.
I don't know what it is. I couldn't find any Pizziza to match. So if anybody has an idea, let me know.
Any ideas? Not anybody?
Yeah, yeah. These Pizzizas are really they're pretty hard. They can be.
Does it grow in a wood?
It was on wood. Yeah, it was
Yeah, yeah,
definitely
I
on
know
wood.
it. I know it, but I just don't feel good. I can't help you now. I'll tell you later. Okay?
Yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll put it on Facebook.
See, yeah, I know it. I found it, but I it just
Okay, well, that would be
can't remember
great. Yeah,
what-
because I couldn't figure that one out.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Great. All right.
Okay.
Do you look at the Gyromitra now, or do you want to save that for next week?
Well, look at it now because I don't think we would consider this to be a false morel.
Okay.
'Cause once you see it, you'll think that looks like more like a Pizziza or something, right? Yeah, this thing is a
Yeah.
Gyromitra. I think it used to be in Discina. So
Oh,
species are
Discinia.
getting shuffled back and forth between Discina and Gyromitra.
Pig's ear.
But that's not what it is. That's
Oh.
not what this is. Yeah, it looked. That's what I thought. Probably it was Discina pig's ear at first, but I forget exactly why this turned out to be this Gyromitra. I guess the spores. Gyromitra spores are usually, you know what? I didn't get spores from this, and I forget exactly what it was. This was on wood. These are on wood for sure. And I forget if the Discina is also
Yeah.
on wood.
I remember seeing these in the Asco book, seeing some things that were called Gyromitras. I was surprised.
Yeah, you know, I should have reviewed, but like I said, I fell asleep, and I forget exactly why. I was pretty sure. So who else voted on that anyway? Somebody else voted on it because there's 2 votes there.
Oh,
Walt.
Walt Sturgeon.
Oh, that's Walt Sturgeon. So he's, you know, he usually knows.
Yeah, seems pretty legit, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
I found it more than once at Ricketts Glen. So really big old trees. They might be hemlock or something like that where it's grown. I'm not sure. Really old, big logs that are hard to identify. Yeah, so those are pretty cool. I wish I could have got some spores from it. Oh, this is a neat one. Ryzena Enchilada. This thing grows in spruce or pine forest, and you never see it, the fruit bodies, until after there's fire. Now, there was no fire in this spot, but somebody made like a small campfire in this stand of spruce. And this was the second year in a row that I found this. So it's just these kind of glob looking things, but they're not thick. They're, you know, they're like inverted Pizziza sort of, but I mean, that's the texture of it. It's, and they're not concave. And supposedly this is a pathogen on conifer, young conifers. So I called Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, because this is on a state forest property, and let them know that I had found this. I'm not sure what they did. I did have a little discussion going with them for a while. But it's not a real common one, but once you find it, it's pretty obvious. Once you start looking to try to find out what it is, when you do find it's pretty obvious. So I don't know, you don't have to do all of these, but this one's pretty cool though, because these blue cups, you don't know what the species is until you can find some spores. And I found spores, and a lot of times I don't find spores on these. So some spores dropped out of these. I got some nice fruit bodies and laid them out, and some spores dropped, and I was able to get spore dimensions. And there's a big difference in the spore dimensions between the 2 species of, I think it's Chlorosplenium, right? Is that the genus here? I think that's what it's called.
Right there, right?
Chlorosplenium, right. So this one's Aeruginescens, I guess it is. The other one is, the species name is similar. It's a little bit longer. And there's the spores. So once you can see the spores and get dimensions, and I think this is the type with the longer spores. I'm not sure. You know what? I have the book here.
Dave, if you read
Yeah.
the Mycedes book, there are also microscopic features that may help you too. There is something in the shape and in this type.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some other stuff I know. I
Yeah.
remember running across some other features. But if you can find spores, you can nail the species because there's a fairly big difference in the range of spore lengths. So if you're lucky enough to get some spores, that's usually good enough to tell, is my understanding. Those are really nice looking though, but some of the photos came out all right. 367. Yeah. So maybe I'll find out if this is hypoxylon or annulohypoxylon now, because I'm not sure this next one. You can just go real fast. I'm sorry, was there a question? Was that you, Igor?
No, that wasn't me. No.
Oh, okay, so anyway, there's a photo here that's taken through a loop, and the photo came out all right. If you blow up the photo taken through the loop, this one, you get pretty good detail here. Yeah, if you do a zoom there. So I guess this is hypoxylon then, because I don't see the little annuli along the, surrounding the or is there?
I don't
Maybe
see
there
any.
is.
No, I don't see any. My picture was
Yeah.
through a loop also.
Yeah, it just
Oh,
looks,
that's hypoxylon.
yeah, it looks like it's just the ruptures.
Okay, so this is probably just hypoxylon
Yeah,
then.
this is hypoxylon. It's more, yeah.
On beechwood.
Yeah, the fragiformis.
Fragiformis, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was my guess of, okay, so that's some evidence, in favor of the one genus as opposed to I think the spores all look the same for those guys. The hypoxylon and
No,
hypoxylon.
no.
Oh no, they
There's
don't.
a difference in the slit, in the shape of the slit and how far it goes towards the tips of the spores. Because,
Oh, okay.
sometimes it crosses the whole spore and sometimes it doesn't.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying, yeah?
I'll look it up and find out what it means.
Yeah, no, look,
I'm not quite sure, but
I don't know if
I'll
you know a
figure that
coffee
out.
bean. A coffee bean is two beans.
Oh, the
together.
coffee bean has like the slit
Yes,
the longitudinal split.
So
I got it.
each
I
spore
got it.
has that.
Germ slit, maybe?
I don't know. It's something that crosses the spore from end to end, or maybe shorter, not from end to end. So that's a special feature to know too. What
This
kind of
photo. Oh, I'm sorry. This photo probably does not resolve well enough to see this feature because this is through my old monocular scope. I get good measurements and the pictures come out decent, but I can see more detail through my other scope, which is binocular scope, through which I don't get good pictures because snapping a photo through the one eyepiece, it just doesn't work out. So
Yeah, you can't see them on here.
yeah, I think you probably can't. Right in the middle would be the best resolution. Yeah, you can't really see. So I see. So these do look kind of like coffee beans. That's a pretty good analogy. And then there's this slit that you can almost see something. But yeah, next time, if I make another collection of these, I'm actually going to go maybe over the weekend to the spot where I found this because the snow will be melted by the weekend, at least down by the Susquehanna River where I found those. So, and did anybody have Armula?
No. So here's another example of the Loria.
There's another orange peel fungus. I got some spores here too. The spores of this species have a lot of ornamentation. It's like this coarse reticulation. It's a raised reticulation. You can almost see here. They also have these knobs on the ends. These polar knobs. So
They look like little pine cones.
Yeah, they look like little pine cones. Yep, yep, yep. That's a good analogy. There's another. There are other ascos that have spores that look like that. There's actually a thing that's orange that has spores that look like that. I forget the name of it, but it's really tiny. And the Xylaria, as was pointed out before, the fruit bodies can be a few inches wide. The other thing is only a few. It's like under a centimeter. Okay, so here we go. Armula Craterium. When you see these, a lot of times that'll mean morels are about 1 to 2 weeks in the future. So these are one of the first things to come out. They look like they're terrestrial, but they actually grow on woody debris, little sticks and things that are buried usually. And they're pretty distinctive. I don't even think I did any microscopy on this because when you find these, you know what they are. They're pretty distinctive. I find them mostly every spring, and they'll persist. Once they come out, they'll last for a while. So they'll come out usually maybe around April 10th, April 15th, depending on the weather, April 20th if it's a cold spring, and then they'll be around for a few weeks. So when I look for morels in the forest, like tulip poplar forest, a lot of times I'll find a few of these here and there.
And these are the ones they call devil's urns, right?
Yeah, devil's urns, except when Tom Volk was collecting them, he was taking collections from people who wanted to send them in. I sent him some. He was calling them black tulip fungus. So I don't know, calling them devil's urns. I suppose that has some sort of like negative connotation or something. But yeah, Tom was collecting these for a while because he was extracting something from them that was believed to possibly have some sort of value in researching the treatment of cancer. So I'm not sure how far that research ever got. I never really heard anything. So yeah, that's it. That's mine. Okay, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. All right, great. Well, thank you everyone who shared tonight. Thank you for everyone who stuck around for the extra credit, I should say. Very cool. So again, next week we'll do morels and all the associated things. And I hope everyone has a great week and you guys start finding some mushrooms out there. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Yep, you too. Good night.
Bye,
night.
thanks. That was awesome.
Okay, bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.